that more people get to know about Bharata first. Let me talk about an incident that took place over the weekend and had repercussions, not just in India, but across the world as well. A comment on Prophet Muhammad by a Bharatiya Janata Party spokesperson on live television has resulted in a diplomatic row between India and Gulf nations. The Gulf nations accused Nupur Sharma of making derogatory comments about Prophet Muhammad during a television debate. Sharma was suspended by the BJP following the uproar, and Delhi media head for the BJP, Naveen Kumar Jindal, was also expelled by the party for his comments on social media. The comments were criticized by the governments of Qatar, Kuwait, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Afghanistan, Malaysia, and Pakistan, among others, as they called the comments insulting and asked for an explanation from India. In this edition of Big Picture, we will analyze the diplomatic row caused by the comments. Join me on the program today are Professor A.K. Pasha, Center for West Asian Studies, School of International Studies, JNU, and Ambassador Anil Trigunayat, former Ambassador of India to Jordan and Libya. Ambassador, let me start the program with you first. How would you look at the diplomatic row that has been caused by the comments made by Nupur Sharma? Because, you know, the entire Islamic world seems to have come together as one and is clearly upset with what has happened.
Well, rightly so. In fact, I believe that this was a totally unnecessary controversy that has been created by disrespect to Prophet Muhammad. That should not have been done in the first place. But as you are saying that the row that has erupted, and this came from Qatar and Iran and several other countries, now 18 in total, and Oman's Mufti actually also issued a major statement. Now, this is a normal reaction that should come from the world. And we should not forget, I mean, when we are talking about the West Asian countries or the Muslim countries, that in India, we have nearly 1/10 of the world's Muslim population here. So it is not that we are talking only about them, it is the sensitivities of all the Muslims. And in my view, no religion should demean the other under any circumstances. It should not happen. And especially more responsibility lies on the people who are spokesmen or who are in the position of power or responsibility. India is a secular country, so it has to be there. Now, what has happened in this case is, as you rightly mentioned, that they asked for apology or explanation or something like that. The explanation was given, action was taken, and so at the government to government level, this has been conveyed. Our ambassadors were called, they explained to them. So I don't see that there is going to be any major repercussion of it in terms of bilateral relations between our countries. Because unfortunately, because of this one incident, India has come into focus. As you know, that this government, especially under Modi, has done a tremendous work on activating the West Asia policy, taking it from merely a transactional to a truly strategic one. And all those countries are looking at it. And we were going to reap the dividends of it already. We were seeing it. You have seen that Pakistan, to a great extent, was sidelined by especially the UAE and Saudi Arabia, wherever the questions of Article 370 or, for that matter, Balakot or Pulwama were concerned. Those are great achievements for these countries to come and stand with you or even be neutral. But now with this thing, an unnecessary controversy has been created and put India on a back foot. And it is important for us, as you know, the region is important for energy security, food security, diaspora welfare, and all that. So those are very much there. But at the same time, to be in the eye of the storm for nothing and for a stupidity of this magnitude, I think has to be curtailed, and there have to be certain red lines that need to be prescribed. And so it's extremely important that we continue to do so. Secondly, why I say that not much action impact it might have. You have today the Iranian foreign minister in India. We had, unfortunately, when the controversy happened, our vice president was in Qatar. So the thing is that if you see his program and the meetings and interactions and the outcomes, you see that this is, since the relationship is mutually beneficial. Therefore, the countries look at it from their own self-interest perspective. And today, the global economy is going into a turmoil, and India remains a major economy and a major consumer country and a major market. So obviously, those countries also look at India in this way. So it is in mutual interest. But I still say, and I'll stop here, that it should not happen again.
Absolutely. It should not happen again because it has caused quite a bit of a backlash, really, as far as the ties between India and West Asia are concerned. Ties for which both India and the West Asian countries have come together, worked really hard to take it up to another notch, another level, make it a strategic partnership as well. And this definitely comes as an irritant. Professor, let me bring you into the picture now. Would you at some level still say that this is a setback for all the hard work that we've done in the recent past to try and improve the relations between India and the Islamic world, and more importantly, the West Asian nations?
Yeah, basically, I would see this as a passing cloud or a storm in the teacup. It was completely avoidable, and you see, it was a very insensitive comment by an inexperienced and completely sort of illiterate person about how religious matters have to be tackled in a situation like this. Apparently, she was not aware of the implications, perhaps. But what is significant is this is the immediate fallout. But this sort of things, what we are hearing from Kuwait to the other members of the OIC, we had been noticing sharp editorials, sharp articles, comments in the social media. It was in the making for quite some time because of the several insensitive comments made by members of parliament, MLAs, politicians, and other religious leaders here in India, which was being noted through the television channels, which were aggravating the situation by giving wide publicity to, all sorts of comments which were seen as anti-religious or directed at one community. So the Muslims all over the world were watching the situation with concern, coming from a country of great civilization, cultural contacts, and as a major economic power, military power, political stability, secularism, and all the ideals, values which we have cherished and supported, championed through decolonization at the UN, NAM, and all the other forums. Last couple of years, there is some deviation in the time-tested policy. That is to allow social harmony, inclusivity, and cultural diversity and religious tolerance. All this is under strain within India. And this is a provocation which invited the adverse comment as much as asking for an apology from the country, which is completely unexpected from a strategic ally like Qatar, or the actions which we are seeing from the Imam of Oman, or the calling of the ambassadors to the Foreign Office from Kuwait to other countries, and others in the OIC following up from Malaysia in the east to Egypt, Libya, and so on and so forth. So you see, as the former Prime Minister, BJP Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, during the 2002 events had pointed out that we should not allow such a situation within the country, which will force us to bow our heads outside. So we have to work within the country and respect the rules, regulations, constitution, and the time-tested inclusive policy, which was a deviation. So in that way, many people, as you know, in West Asia are swept away by the increasing religiosity or Islamic resurgence, which we see since 1979. People have become oversensitive. And in every country, whether it is a monarchy, whether it is a military dominated, a secular, so-called secular country like Turkey or Lebanon or even Algeria, which is largely socialist in many ways, people there have been impacted by the flow of religion religious ideas, religious preachers, not to speak of the Wahhabi ideology, which has been quite active since last 20, 25 years. So the religious awakening, religious groups, whether it is the emergence of Taliban or Islamic State or the ideals propagated by Iran, so on and so forth, all this had made an impact. So we had to be sensitive to the people there. Although I would concede that most of these regimes or dictatorships or monarchies are authoritarian, despotic, and largely representative of the people. But they are also sensitive because things may go out of hand in these countries, where a small incident involving Indians or immigrants would snowball into major law and order problem in those countries, which will be difficult to manage by these rulers. So in that way, they were afraid of the implications, because you would recall during the Babri Masjid, there were several incidents in the UAE which led to law and order problem, and the UAE had to expel hundreds and thousands of people of different countries. So they didn't want to take chances. So like the Satanic Verses book, which Khomeini used to immediately mobilize. So in that way, one after the other, the Islamic countries, even though difficult for them to take any step against India, but they were forced by the circumstances because it involved the religion, not so much the Muslims in India who are under pressure because of the India's policies.
Absolutely. Ambassador, coming back to you now, we saw that the government went into immediate damage control, tried to douse the fire as soon as possible. That also tells us a great deal about the respect and the importance that we give the nations in West Asia, because it is a special partnership, isn't it?
Well, it's true that this is a special partnership, and it is a mutually sustaining partnership to a great extent. And now it has become really a truly strategic partnership. But the fact remains is that this was so sudden. It could be a product of thinking, but at the same time, this is something which has put you on a back foot. And therefore, the job of the diplomacy is to reduce the damage that has been done to the extent possible. And that's why I say that it has been to some extent successful, because the statements that have come after that from these countries, be it from Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, all of them, they have acknowledged that the action has been taken. So the instant action that was taken, but then at the same time, since nowadays it's a war of narratives everywhere, you have some of these ultra-nationalists on both sides or ultra-religious groups on both sides, which try to create these hashtags and carry on, once again. So that does not help the situation. That actually fends the situation. Now, with this, apart from the fact that Arab Street itself may be charged to a great extent, and as Professor mentioned, the ruling classes there basically don't have real control over the Arab Street. So therefore they have to go along in order to assuage them. So we have much to lose with regard to our own citizens who are there in those countries, and there have been some instances where they feel that they are being subjected to some kind of maybe harassment. But at the same time, I believe that this time maybe we have been able to coast clear on this. But it cannot be allowed to go on. And there have been instances by some of these lumpen elements, I would call them, who have occasionally come up with these kind of statements. So in my view, as far as the TV debates nowadays are becoming like point scoring duels, basically by any means. So you just, as Professor mentioned, people don't understand what are the implications of it, and haven't even read anything. They don't even understand. They just listen, and then they want to replicate it by adding their adjectives. So it doesn't work that way. There have to be a do's and don'ts. And in my view, I think even the media needs to be have to have a self-discipline, or maybe told that you cannot allow these kind of things to have a social discourse. So I feel that we don't have to go outside so much and bother about whatever is the other countries are saying or doing. We have to look at our own people. if there is a distress here, it is not good for us. And then you have Al-Qaeda's and others who are coming in and taking advantage of it. Pakistan is taking advantage of it. In the OIC, they quickly go and get a statement issued. And they've been doing all the time. So you are unnecessarily creating a controversy where there was none. And no one has gained in the process and everyone has lost. India is losing its face for no rhyme or reason. Just because one spokesperson says something stupid. I mean, that's it.
Very true. Absolutely. Points very well taken, Ambassador. Professor, let me come back to you and build on something that the ambassador has just said. Would you say that this just gives a handle for people, the deep state, especially in Afghanistan and in Pakistan, to try and unnecessarily target India? And how far can they go with this, really, as far as our friends in West Asia are concerned?
You see, the friendship remains solid. The foundations are strong. And I don't think this will shake up the friendship or bilateral ties or damage irreparably beyond a point. There are factors which are much deeper than these. You would recall the Prophet's caricatures or cartoons in France and Netherlands and other countries. There was an uproar in many Arab and OIC countries. It was handled with sophistication and with some amount of pressure from law and order agencies also. So the relationship remains strong between the two because of a number of factors: the historical factor, the cultural factors, the growing economic interaction, and the fact that India is not a banana republic which will go away or come under pressure. It is a major power which they look for, in many areas, not just economic trade, market or other issues, but also as a counterweight to China or as a defense supplier in some cases. So in that way, cyber security, terrorism, and all of these issues are there, which are enduring, which are strong bonds apart from the workers, trade, energy, maritime security, food security, and all of these things. This is just, as I said, a storm in the cup or passing cloud. Both would try to get back as soon as possible to normal and see this as something. But you see, there are two things. One is a similar situation happened during the Babri Masjid, and the Prime Minister had to personally go P.V. Narasimha out to Iran to explain and convince the leadership there, especially the Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. And the Prime Minister of India promised that the masjid would be rebuilt, and no other structure of a similar nature would be questioned, and Parliament has passed the bill. But what we see is those were referred to as miscreants or hoodlums or, out of bound, people who destroyed that Babri Masjid. So now also the two people who have been suspended, they have been referred to in a particular adjective. So what they see is not just these two incidents, but what the government follows up in terms of its policy towards the Islamic minority here, or how India conducts its policy with the rest of the Islamic world. So in that way, we have to be very cautious. This is a warning signal from these countries that there are limits to the tolerance of sensitive issues on religion. We might dismiss what the Taliban say, but we cannot afford to ignore what Saudi Arabia says or Qatar or the Mufti of Oman, because Oman has been a long-standing ally of India, and he would not speak without the authorization of the Sultan there. or even Bahrain or Egypt, we can ignore Taliban, Turkey, even to a certain extent Iran, but not our closest strategic partners who are very important for a variety of reasons. See, there is another factor. The warning signals were coming from the United States, from the US Congress, from the Congressional Committee. Anthony Blinken himself, when the foreign minister went to United States, he referred to the issues of minorities, so on and so forth in India, human rights issue, which of course Jaishankar quietly ignored that, and when he got back, he referred to that incident and raised the issue in a different context. But you must remember that some of these countries who have raised eyebrows, from Qatar to Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, Oman, Bahrain and all, they are very closely tied with the United States. They are dependent on American security, and they would not do or say anything without some kind of a signal from the master, virtually, the United States. So we must keep this symbiotic umbilical cord between these states and the United States. So we have to be careful. And we ignored the United States warning as the interference or some such thing from a friend, our strategic partner. When we don't have a Soviet Union and we are looking to build a strategic relationship with the United States, and when that close ally is alerting us on the implications of our domestic policy, we cannot afford to ignore the statements in the Congress, in the House of Representatives. And when they feel frustrated, they will give a signal to these countries, and that is how the sharp reaction has come from the GCC countries. I'm not saying that these GCC countries are totally, dependent in a way even to issue such kind of a statement, but there is a link I see between the United States and these countries' sharp reaction to India, and it's a warning signal. We have to be very cautious.
Absolutely. All right. Time to get quick closing comments now from both my panelists with the best way forward, starting first with you, Ambassador.
Well, the best way forward is let us stick to our constitution and in letter and spirit.
All right. And Professor?
Professor, myself, just two lines. That is, you see, the country, the nation, the constitution, our prestige as a country, and our aspirations and our claims for Vishwaguru are much more important than electoral politics and small-time winning and losing elections in state or otherwise. We have to keep the electoral politics behind and see the national interest first, because we aspire to be a member of the United Nations and a global player. We cannot afford to indulge in this petty issues which will tarnish our image irreparably.
All right, gentlemen, we'll have to leave to that. Thank you so much for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. Well, that was a very good discussion, of course, on this very important topic, and both the ambassador and the professor putting their points of view with regards to where we stand from a diplomatic backlash point of view. As far as our relations with the Arab world, the West Asian countries is concerned, it's a very strong and a time-tested relationship. And an issue like this is not really going to upset the apple cart, so to speak. For the time being, it is just a flash in the frying pan and nothing more than that. But it is something for us to be careful of going into the future, because the sensitivities of the Arab world should be kept in mind, because they are of utmost importance as far as our energy security needs are concerned, and it is not good for us to rub them the wrong way. This is a sensitive issue as far as a certain religion is concerned, and it may have repercussions as far as international relations are concerned as well. And hence, if we have to move forward in the right direction, take gains from the hard work that we've put in to build a robust relationship with West Asia, then we have to tread this line carefully and not upset our friends and allies, because we have ambitions of becoming a global superpower. We have an ambition of gaining a permanent seat at the UNSC. So these aspects will always come up and come to the fore. We may have our own repercussions and compulsions domestically, but if we have to be a global superpower, this is something that we need to consider and take forward in a way where we can ensure that our own interests are taken care of, even as we understand the domestic compulsions and pressures of our friends abroad as well. Well, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Big Picture. But since you're here, please like the video, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and share the content as well so that more people get to know about Bharata First. And also, let me remind you about Bharata First Knowledge Center, learning experience that like none other, which will transform the way you learn. If you are considering a career in the Indian civil service and becoming a bureaucrat or getting into public service, then this is the place for you to be. Log on to kc.bharatafirst.com, register now to one of the courses and transform the way you learn. It will not just help you in your learning experience, but will also make you a better human being, because the courses are designed in a way which will holistically take you forward, keeping in mind all the needs and necessities a person has as far as the journey is concerned. So register now or download the Bharata First app. We have massive discounts going on because of a few good people being able to give the courses at less than 150 rupees a course. So now is when you should go and register. That's it from me. Until next time, this is Frankrausanpereira signing off.